Well, welcome to the Aging Boomers. I'm your host, Frank Sampson. Of course, on this show, we discuss so many of the issues facing not only boomers, but their parents, and of course, what we know is an aging population today. I'm part of that aging population. So we're thrilled to have you on. Thanks for all your support. We're getting just great comments, great suggestions, so keep them coming in. You could subscribe on iTunes, iHeartRadio, go to our website at agingboomers.com. A lot of people have downloaded our free app on your iPhone or Android phone or iPad, and just type in Aging Boomers and the app will come up, free download, and you'll be updated on all the new shows that we do each Monday and Friday. So I want to let everybody know that today's show is sponsored by Senior Care Authority, a professional senior placement and elder care management organization that has a national network of advisors to help in determining the right path for seniors in receiving proper care or supervision. So whether it is in-home care, assisted living, residential, or memory care, get the necessary advice from a senior care advisor in your area by calling Senior Care Authority at 888-809-1231 or go to www.seniorcareauthority.com. So we're talking coast to coast here. California talking to New York, and we're thrilled to have with us Jim Hurley. Jim is the franchise owner of Homestead Senior Care, which is an in-home care company. He'll talk a little more about the organization. He's based in Schenectady, New York, and Jim takes pride in knowing that his organization strives to provide the best area care for the seniors. And through his relations and affiliations in the community, Jim stays in tune with the changes that are affecting seniors' lives. Jim is a member of the Schenectady, not being from New York, I probably don't pronounce it the right way, but from the Schenectady County Long-Term Care Consortium and Capital District Senior Housing Option Providers. He is also a board member for the Rotary Club of Schenectady and for Visiting Nurses Foundation. Jim is also actively involved in the Alzheimer's Association of Northeast New York. Jim, thanks so much for joining us on the Aging Boomers.
My pleasure, Frank. It's an honor to be with you.
Yeah, no, it's great to have you. So, we're going to talk more about your organization, Homestead Senior Care. I think I mentioned you before we got on the air that, I've interviewed a number of caregivers and in-home care organizations, and you're in a pretty competitive environment. I mean, it's a much needed service. So I thought we would just start out you just educating us about some of the trends going on in home care. I know that there are probably trends in New York. I know there's trends going on here in California. But it's certainly being closely, looked at to make sure that organizations are doing it the right way, which I'm sure you are. So why don't you talk a little bit about that?
Sure. And in fact, I think home care itself is a trend. Mm-hmm. The home care provides the opportunity for people, obviously, to remain living where they are rather than move to the next step. I think within home care, there are an increasing number of remote monitoring systems, things like that, medication management systems for people. There are things to do outside of just having a caregiver come to the home that can keep people home longer. And I think all the trends with healthcare today is to try and steer people away from longer stays in the hospital. I mean, in order to get admitted into a hospital, it's increasingly difficult. They're almost pushing them out of the emergency rooms, and
right.
Then once they're in the hospital, they try and not keep them there just because of the costs related.
Right. They want to, and it's probably more related. That's a whole nother discussion, but more related to Medicare, I would think, where
very much so. Yeah.
Medicare wants, it's willing to pay for a certain amount, but it's like get them in, get them out, and it's not like it, not like it used to be. So there's certainly, many people that need your type of service. So you mentioned some interesting things. I think there's a lot of technology out there, and being in Northern California and have had discussions with some very innovative companies here in Silicon Valley that are coming out with a lot of that technology. I know the first people they go to are people like you. People, whether it be your parent organization, whether to you directly, but they're trying to market all this new technology. Some is very good, some maybe not so good. All right,
exactly.
So, you getting confronted, I would think, by these organizations that have the next best thing. How do you yourself determine what would be best for your clients?
Well, it's difficult, and each individual's case is so different. One of the things that they do with medication management is they have dispensers that will every day dispense the proper medication at the proper time into the bin, and
right.
then everything's ready to go for the senior to take their medications.
Yeah.
The problem comes from people that have memory issues, which is very common. People that have Alzheimer's disease and continue to live at home. Having the pills sitting in a little bin isn't going to help them a whole lot. They still need that specific reminder to take your pills right now, and really somebody there to be watching them take it.
Yeah. So, having I don't understand your business as well as you do, but I have a pretty good understanding of, of the business. I would think that some of the technology out there that would be extremely helpful. You probably have, it's a big organization, and I'm sure you have a wide range of clients that need a wide range of care. And I would think that some of the technology could maybe even replace a caregiver going to the home. It could be just somebody staying in touch with them remotely and making sure things are being done. Have you been doing any of that, or do you believe in doing that?
We don't get involved in that, but there are technologies that can help families, I think, feel more comfortable about assisting their parents remotely.
Right.
And even things like that medication dispenser system. When you have, memory loss is not a normal part of aging. So there are a lot of people that are very capable of taking their medications every day. But sometimes because of arthritis or vision issues or things like that, those dispensers can really aid them in their day-to-day living.
Right.
So for those people, that's fine. There are more and more video systems and things like that, so that adult children can assist their parents from a distance, and I think that's great. But obviously, there comes a time where you need a little bit more care, and it's not necessarily just care for that person taking their meds or getting ready for the day. It's also things around the house, like meal preparation or just housekeeping things, transportation, those kind of issues where actually having a person come to the house is a big help. And you're not obligated to have somebody with you all the time, but just somebody to help you with those tasks. Great.
So I'm going to want to spend some time with you, if we can, talking about caregivers, the caregivers that work for you, and we'll just talk about caregivers in general, because I think that's the main focus with most families is getting the right caregiver. But before we do that, I want to, as I mentioned, there's a lot of companies out there, and being in the business, many families are sometimes confronted with a situation with a loved one that they got to make a quick decision. They got to get somebody to the house quickly. It may not be, they may not have the luxury of going and interview a few different organizations and interview caregivers and make a decision in a few weeks. Some of them have to move quick and may not have had any experience or knowledge. So what suggestions do you give to those people, and how does an organization like yours differ from others to help in that situation?
Well, I think the recommendation would be to get, if you're finding yourself in a situation where you see that might be a need sometime in the near future, then be in touch with an organization such as ours, have them come out and just assess the situation and get into the system. Just have your parents or your own name and address in the system so that if something were to come up short term, they know who you are, the situation's already been assessed. We are able to start service oftentimes within an hour or shorter if there's an emergency situation. It's not uncommon for us to get a call from the emergency room from somebody that had to take a trip there. They're not ready to be admitted to the hospital, but they can't send them home without help. And we're called upon to start service immediately.
Right.
And we can certainly do that. We have, in our office, we have over 300 caregivers. It gives us a good bench strength to draw from. They've all been, thoroughly screened and vetted. They're great people. And oftentimes they're ready to go on very short notice.
I mean, I think it's a great idea what you said about, if a family were to, even if they weren't quite ready to get help for mom or dad, they know it might be coming, and they're working on them, and etc. So what suggestion would you give to an adult child to approach their parent or parents saying, hey, listen, we're going to be bringing somebody out, talk to you. We're not doing anything right now, but how do you suggest they approach them to do it in a positive way?
Well, we have visited a family on a care consultation and actually started service 4 years later.
Wow.
So that's planning early. But at least they were ready. The people were in our system, and it was no problem starting. Sorry.
Oh, that's all right. Listen, we're in a high-tech world. That goes on.
If the concern is that the parents, the parents are never going to welcome a service like ours with open arms. Sure, I'd love to have somebody come in, or not very often will that happen. So if somebody doesn't live within that short emergency drive of their parents, it's always a good idea to at least start the conversation. If the parents needed a plumber, they can go to the yellow pages and call a plumber and have them come over, and no problem fixing it. But to actually help the parents themselves, it's not so simple. A pipe is not a pipe when it comes to people. Right. And you have to know them, a little bit about them, a little bit about the situation, and the layout of the home, whether there's pets, those kinds of things. The consultation, and I think this goes pretty much across the board is free. There's no obligation. We don't do any hard sell. We don't, call people and say, "Hey, are you ready to start now? Are you ready to start?" It's really informational to either go out and meet them or have them come into the office. I mean, more often we'll go out to the home and meet with people. But if the families want to come into the office and just meet and discuss the situation, it serves the same purpose. We get to know them.
Yeah. So the caregivers themselves, you said you've got 300 caregivers. That's a huge amount, and they all work for you, correct? They're employees of yours, right?
Right.
Yeah.
Yes.
And so the families don't have to worry about anything. You take care of all the benefits and everything that goes with it.
Exactly.
So how do you then, are you actually selecting the caregiver for that individual and their particular needs? Are you providing a few options to the family for them to interview the caregivers? How does that work?
When the families start service with us, they're hiring the agency. They're not hiring the person. Mm-hmm. When we provide service, it depends totally on the situation, the amount of care that's needed, how much lead time we have to start. But I'll give you a typical Monday through Friday, 3 to 5 hours a day or something like that. We're going to make every effort to provide one caregiver, continuity of care. They get to know that person. They get to build a relationship. They get to find out about each other and their likes and dislikes, and everything works out perfectly. If we do that and it's not a perfect match, then we make it very clear, just say, "Hey, Mary's a great girl, but maybe we could try somebody different." And that's fine. That's really, the best case scenario for both if it's a perfect match.
And are you getting that information from the family in a proactive way so they don't feel like, "Oh, Mary's nice, but just not, I don't think she's the right fit," and they don't want to get her in trouble or anything?
No,
so.
Yeah, exactly. Maybe she just talks a little too much, or she's either bossy or too standoffish, or whatever it is.
So you seek out that information from the family so they don't have to feel bad about it.
Exactly. We get a good sense of the personality of the senior, mm-hmm. and it allows us to make a good match. Obviously, one of the first things we look at is at the times that they're looking for service, and the families pick the times. We don't tell them when we'll be there. They tell us when they need us. When we find out the times, we come back and look who's available on those times. Sometimes we have to tweak a little bit on the caregiver side, and maybe assign them differently for somebody else. But that's kind of how we do it. Is we find out when they're available. If somebody needs 24-hour care, they're not going to get one person and one person only. They'll probably get 3 shifts a day. We don't do live-ins, that kind of thing. So we'll provide care, but it won't be one person.
Right.
And sometimes, if it's 7 days a week, or if they have an AM and a PM shift, we'll get multiple people in there, and that's not a bad thing because it gives us a better opportunity. If somebody has to call off, the person that's replacing them, they've already met.
Yeah. Oh, that's great. That's great.
If somebody wants to meet a caregiver ahead of time, there's no problem with that.
Yeah.
But it's not really an interview system because basically we've already interviewed them.
Mm-hmm.
The family can get to know them, but they're not going to learn a lot from 10 minutes sitting in the living room deciding between 3 people.
Right. But the nice thing is that if that caregiver does get sick, or they get vacation too, so at least you have somebody else that can fill in, and they're not left hanging.
Absolutely. And any time that happens, and they get a person that they haven't met, we'll always bring them over, introduce them, let them know basically what the system is within the home, the routine of the senior, so that they're not just constantly training somebody new. We'll take care of all that.
Okay. So I know that, every state is different in their regulations. I'm not as up on New York regulations as it relates to in-home care companies, but even if they do require a certain amount of training, it's usually when a state does it, it's pretty minimal. So I would think that an organization like yours provides more training than maybe the average caregiver does get. Can maybe expound upon that? What type of training your caregivers go through on an ongoing basis?
Sure. We have, within New York, and like you said, every state is different, and New York doesn't have a reputation for being the easiest to provide service in.
Right.
We have licensed care and non-licensed care. So really what I'm going to address is the non-licensed care, which is the majority of what we provide. Licensed care, you end up with a nurse involved, and it has to be a certified home health aide, and that's a different level of training. So on the regular caregiver side, we can hire from anybody. We can hire good, quality, compassionate, intelligent people to provide the care. So we give them about 6 hours of orientation before they start. And the orientation is an introduction to what we do. We give them safety training. We give them training in relationships and sort of an overview of some of the chronic conditions that they may run into. Past that, we have more specific training when it comes to chronic conditions, when it comes to Alzheimer's and dementia. We have ongoing training that is all provided to us through Home Instead. And then we have, when we have caregiver meetings, we have outside speakers come in, and we do in-service training pretty much continually throughout the year.
That's great. That's great. And I got to believe that they appreciate it, the caregivers themselves. They want to know more. So
yeah,
that's
absolutely. It's one of the biggest items that affects retention of caregivers, keeping them working for us for a longer period of time. And recruiting and retraining caregivers is always one of our biggest struggles.
A question just came to mind. Are you concerned about the future of finding caregivers with the, it's a term we use in the industry, I'm sure you've heard quite a bit, the silver tsunami. I mean, as the boomers age, and there's going to be so many people, I'm not sure the country is ready. But does it concern you in finding good quality caregivers as things move forward over the next even 10 years?
It does. It's difficult now, but we can hire people from, I would say right now our caregivers probably range in age from about 22 years old to 78 years old.
Mm-hmm.
And so we have, a broader spectrum that we can draw from. And it's a perfect opportunity for either retired people or people with very limited availability. Maybe it's a mom that puts their kids on the bus and they want to be there when the kids get off the bus, and they can't get a traditional job and be able to do that. So, making more opportunities for more people helps us quite a bit.
Yeah.
But that's going to be a problem for everybody, I think.
I'll bet you. I'll I'll make you no bet. I'll just make a prediction. If you figured out what your average age is right now, 10 years from now, figure out what it is, I'll bet you it's quite a bit higher.
I would think so.
Yeah.
It'll rise right along with the boomers.
Right. So, Jim, we just have a couple minutes, but I'd like you to, share with our listeners, maybe just give them some advice. Because I do know, being in the industry, that sometimes families, listen, it's very expensive. Any type of long-term care, whether it's in-home care, assisted living, you could do all the comparisons. Bottom line, everything's a lot of money. All right?
Absolutely.
And, so some families will take a shortcut and say, what do I need to use an agency for? I'll save X number of dollars by just hiring somebody direct. I guess I just want you to educate our listeners over the next couple minutes and, more of a buyer beware. Everything has a, kind of you get what you pay for. So what are some of the things people should consider when they're looking at that type of an option?
Sure. I would say you mentioned competitors, and we certainly have competitors. And when it comes to other agencies, frankly, I welcome it because there's probably more care needs out there than we can provide, certainly. But one of our biggest competitors is private hires, and that's, I think, what you alluded to.
Correct.
I think going to Craigslist or a newspaper ad to find somebody for care obviously brings its own potential problems. You don't have, workers' comp insurance. You don't have insurance against theft, and technically you should be paying payroll taxes on them, as they should be. But some people get very reliable referrals from a stay in a rehab hospital or a nursing home when they're going home, and if you can get somebody, then
yeah,
go ahead.
But the risk come with it.
The thing about an agency is that you have so many more protections with an agency, and it's very important. We do criminal background check, we do drug screening, we do and we do that continually throughout their employment, so that the people that are going into the house, you really do worry more about the personality match. You don't have to worry about the safety of the senior.
Yeah, that's great. I'm glad you covered those things. So, unfortunately, we're out of time, but I do want you to take a moment, and if people want to learn more about Home Instead and wanted to contact you, how would they go about doing that?
Yeah, well, homeinstead.com is a wonderful resource, and it has links to a multitude of opportunities on the web for information overall. Our office in particular is homeinstead.com/334. That's our franchise number, and that will take you to us. But homeinstead.com is a great resource.
Great. Well, good. Well, I just commend you on the work you do, and we all have to do our part. A lot of challenges ahead. So I want to thank you for taking the time and joining us, Jim. Love to have you back in the future.
Thank you, Frank. And by the way, you said Schenectady perfectly.
Did I? I was a little concerned about that. Okay. All right, great. Well, thanks again, and I want to thank all of you for tuning in and for all your support, and just be safe out there, and we'll talk to you all soon.